My greatest sale in 50 years of selling my services. I'm going to show you not only what I did, but how you could do it right now today. It's not that complex, but it is powerful. Powerful beyond your expectations. I was sitting in my office and the phone rang with a call from a man named Andy Smith. He said, "Jim, I met you at the training conference in Atlanta a couple of years ago." I said, "Yeah, I remember meeting you. You're from Harley-Davidson Corporation, and you were doing a presentation about your company's turnaround." He said, "Wow, you were in my audience too. Well, I really enjoyed your keynote that day, and we are thinking of hiring you as the keynote speaker for the 100-year anniversary convention, dealer convention for Harley-Davidson." I said, "Done, I'll do it." He said, "Not so fast." I said, "Well, why not so fast?" He said, "Well, we have a tradition or a practice of always going to a convention where our speaker is giving a speech to someone else and previewing them that way. And so I want to come hear you speak." I said, "Well, Andy, you were in my audience in Atlanta." He said, "Yeah, but that was a couple of years ago." I said, "Have you been on my website?" "Yeah." "You saw the video on the website, the more current video of me?" "Yeah." I said, "Andy, still me. Same guy. You already know I'm a good speaker." He said, "Yeah, but you know, it's our practice." I said, "No, Andy, you don't want to do what you're telling me you want to do." He said, "What?" I said, "You don't want to come hear me speak to the Omaha Lumber Dealers Association, because if you do, at the end of the speech, when I finish shaking hands and talking with the crowd, you're going to say, 'Jim, that was good, but that's not what we're looking for.'" And there's this long pause. And he got very thoughtful and he said, "You're absolutely right." He said, "So, smart guy, what do you recommend?" I said, "What you really want to know, Andy, is do I get it who Harley-Davidson is? Because you know, if I get it who Harley-Davidson is, I'll customize my speech in such a way that your people are going to love it." He said, "Okay, Mr. Big Shot, how do you think we should determine if you understand us?" I said, "Put a motorcycle under me and let's ride." Long pause once again. He said, "Can you be in Denver on Thursday of this week with a helmet if I buy the plane ticket?" I said, "Yes, I can." And he said, "Okay." So I flew to Denver with my helmet. And when I got there, he and I got on individual Harley Road King motorcycles. And we took off for a 3-day tour of the Rocky Mountains. He was buying a new bike and one of his dealers had it there in Denver, and he rented another one like it for me. And for 3 days, we rode mountain passes and mountain tops and valleys and beautiful vistas. We went all over Colorado and just had a blast. We spent time together in the evening around the fire, talking about the day's ride. And at the end of the 3 days, he said, "I got to go on to Milwaukee. I'm going to ride my bike home. You go on back to Denver and turn in your bike. And by the way, you got the job." So I got the job. Now, when I got to the convention, I had already done my homework. Not only that 3 days with Andy, but I started on my own motorcycle, which, by the way, was a Triumph, not a Harley-Davidson. I, on my own motorcycle, rode around to the Southern California, where I lived at the time, Harley-Davidson dealers, and talked with the dealers and talked with the customers and looked at the bikes. And I didn't kick the tires. I touched them, but I didn't kick them out of respect. And when I went to Orlando, where the convention for the dealers was being held, I arrived early, and many of the dealers already knew me, and they introduced me to other dealers. So by the time I got up to give my speech, I was already embraced by the group as one of them. In fact, they had 7 different languages being represented from the 1,500 dealers that flew in from all over the world. And I met in advance with all 7 of those translators, some of them 2 or 3 translators for one language, and told them what my speech was going to be about, so that they could interpret it into their language in a way that would still get a laugh or explain a point or make meaning out of something that might only make sense in English otherwise. And I got a standing ovation from the group. They gave me a Harley-Davidson leather jacket, and a few of us went out and rode some motorcycles locally in that area. Now, what did I do? What's the technique that you learned? You may not have noticed it as I was telling the story, because sometimes the story pulls us in and we don't notice what we learned from it. Andy said what to me? He said, I want to come hear you speak. I knew if he came to hear me speak to IBM or some other group, that it wasn't going to be the kind of speech I would give for Harley-Davidson. So what's better than that? For me to convince him that since he already knows I'm a good speaker, that he and I should be focused on their product line and their company and their culture. And what better way could we do that than riding motorcycles together? Now, if I had not been a motorcyclist, then I would have said, let's meet at a motorcycle dealer or a motorcycling event, like a race or a show or something like that. And let's walk around together for a few hours and look at the products and talk with the owners. So I would have found a way to get into that even if I didn't ride motorcycles. But what a lot of salespeople fail to do is they fail to consider whether the question they were asked is the question they should answer. One time I was in the audience of the famous management guru, Peter Drucker, the dean of American management. The father of American management. And he was speaking, he had an Austrian accent. He was speaking to about 1,000 people at a training conference. And someone in the audience stood up and asked him a question. And he said, that is not the question you should be asking. And I thought, wow, I've never seen anyone do that. But he said the better question would be, and he explained what the question was, and he answered that question. Cool. And he got his point across. Well, the same thing can happen in a sales call. You're talking with someone and they ask you a question, like they say, okay, what's the price? Maybe your answer would be, there's a better question. What's the cost? They might say, well, what's the difference in the two? Price, cost, same thing. No, price is what you pay to acquire it. Cost is the value to you of owning and using it. It may have a very high price and the cost could be virtually nothing. It may have a very low price and the cost of ownership could be very high for maintenance, repairs, downtime, things like that. So let's talk about the cost to you. So you're just taking one technique of simply considering their question and saying, is that the right question? Maybe there's a better question. And then you present the question they should be asking and provide your answer. And you end up riding a motorcycle through the Rocky Mountains and having the time of your life.